Over $250 million. That's what a private buyer paid for a single version of this painting. And at first glance, it doesn't look like much, does it? Two peasants sit at a table, drinking cheap wine, quietly playing cards. No glamour, no drama, just deep concentration and silence. A silence that hides one of the most important breakthroughs in modern art. This is The Card Players, a series of 5 paintings completed by Paul Cézanne in the early 1890s. He was a man whose genius changed painting forever, even though almost no one believed he would ever amount to anything. His best friend once said, he might have the genius of a great painter, but he'll never become one. That wasn't jealousy, it was an observation, because Paul Cézanne was shy, awkward, easily offended, and painfully rude. Socially, he was a disaster. Emotionally, he was a storm. And yet, these card players would sell for $250 million in 2014. The highest price ever paid for a painting at that time, which raises one simple question. Why? What makes this simple painting of card-playing peasants so important? To understand that, you have to understand Cézanne himself. A man constantly at war with critics, with society, and worst of all, with himself. He was born in 1839 in Aix-en-Provence into comfort and security. But comfort doesn't prevent disaster, and security doesn't create confidence. His father, a hat maker turned banker, dismissed Paul's artistic dreams completely, at least initially. His mother, softer and more perceptive, encouraged him. Their conflicting expectations tore Paul in 2 directions. His father sent him to law school. Cézanne obeyed, out of fear, not passion. But while studying civil codes and legal theory, he quietly slipped away to drawing classes. Art was the only place where he didn't feel judged, at least at the time. It shows in his Card Players series. 2 years later, exhausted and miserable, Cézanne left for Paris to pursue art. He arrived full of hope, but was immediately crushed. Paris was elegant and elitist. Cézanne was not, and the École des Beaux-Arts rejected him. Fellow painters whispered about his strange colors, his thick brushstrokes, and his awkward behavior. He felt humiliated. That humiliation grew into lifelong insecurity. And insecurity became the engine behind his obsessive technique. He fled Paris and returned home, defeated, and unwillingly worked at his father's bank. But his misery was so obvious that even his strict father felt it. And in a moment Cézanne never forgot, his father gave him money to try again. Back to Paris he went, only to be rejected again. The 1860s became his dark period. Heavy shadows, muddy palettes, violent brushstrokes. This was the work of a man who doubted everything he touched. But under that darkness, something was forming, something new. At the Swiss Academy, Cézanne met Camille Pissarro. Pissarro was 10 years older and endlessly kind. Cézanne called him God the Father. Through Pissarro, his work brightened. Not emotionally, as Cézanne never really brightened emotionally, but technically, his colors opened up. His brushstrokes became more deliberate, yet socially he still couldn't fit in. Even among the Impressionists, he remained the outsider, too intense, too insecure, too rude. Critics continued to ridicule him. Newspaper reviews compared his paintings to unfinished sketches or the work of a madman. Every insult burrowed deeper into him, and this constant judgment is exactly why the card players feel so intensely focused. Peasants don't judge, especially not when they're playing cards. As the years passed, Cézanne withdrew more and more. He escaped Paris entirely and returned to the Provence. There, under the blinding Mediterranean sun, he found something priceless: solitude. He painted Mont Sainte-Victoire over 75 times, not because the mountain was interesting, but because Cézanne needed stability. It was something that didn't move and didn't judge, something he could study endlessly without fear. He once said, "To paint a landscape correctly, I must first understand its geological stratification." That sentence reveals everything. Cézanne didn't paint what things looked like, he painted what things were made of. Cylinders, spheres, and cones. He painted geometry beneath reality. One stubborn brushstroke at a time, he stripped the world into essential forms. He built depth not with linear perspective, which was common since the Renaissance, but with color relationships. He invented a fragmented view of reality. This allowed him to paint multiple angles at once. This was the seed of Cubism. Henri Matisse and Pablo Picasso called him the father of us all. Perhaps this helped in the $250 million sale of the card players. But just before he began painting this iconic series of paintings, something happened that changed everything in 1886. Cézanne lost his father, and with that loss, he gained an inheritance of 400,000 francs. This was more than enough money to paint without worrying about critics, salons, or sales. Enough freedom to terrify a man who feared failure more than poverty. And into that pressure, Cézanne created this peculiar world of card players. Peasants sitting together but not speaking, focused but not emotional, calm on the surface but tense underneath. This was not a genre scene, it was a self-portrait in disguise. The man's stillness mirrors Cézanne's own cautious nature. Their lowered gazes mirror his intense fear of being looked at, and their isolation mirrors his lifelong loneliness. Even the table between them feels like a barrier, a boundary Cézanne could never cross in real life. Look at the brushwork, short and deliberate. The pipes, the cards, they're nothing more than a few short brushstrokes. That's because Cézanne wasn't painting objects, he was painting perception itself. That's why a small version of the card player sold for an insane amount of money. Because this seemingly unremarkable painting changed the entire direction of modern art. It holds the DNA of cubism, fauvism, and even abstraction. On a personal note, every brushstroke was a negotiation with insecurity. It highlights Cézanne's lifelong battle, as he was misunderstood by others while eagerly trying to prove himself to the world. And he invented a new way of seeing things, a new way of painting reality itself. Not bad for a man who was once told by his best friend that he would never become a great painter. In the end, his stubborn brushstrokes proved otherwise. The Card Players isn't the only painting by Cézanne that fetched a huge amount. A simple still life titled Rideau, Cruchon et Compotier already sold for $61.5 million at Sotheby's in New York back in 1999. He also set the record for the most expensive work on paper in 2007. Somebody paid $25.5 million for a drawing titled Still Life with Green Melon. Finally, a preparatory watercolor of the Card Players sold for $19.1 million in 2012. These are incredible sums that further explain why this version of the Card Players became a record-setting painting.